It was supposed to be a battle against the pandemic to protect the people. It became a battle against the people to protect the pandemic. Just 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Uncle Trump has one shot, one opportunity to stop the death of America. One moment with the freedom of interest, but with DC written, yo. Vivek's palms are sweaty, six big job gets heavy. There's curry on his sweater already, mom's tandoori. He's nervous, but DOT is getting order ready to drop bombs, cause he gon' got the fat with Eddie. He goes down, DC crowd cries so loud. He opens his mouth, the words you find just come out. They choking now, we the people joking now. The clock's run out, time's up, over, bow. Snap back, DOGE, Elon, they spin gravity. Oh, grab your rock, with he choke, he's so ready. Don't boast, make it look easy. No, he works at it, he knows he'll push him in.
So more fun times, Richard.
Okay.
Yeah, let's look at some breaking news. Okay, a new COVID-19 vaccine myocarditis paper has just been published.
Right.
This is the most extensive review and comparison of myocarditis after COVID-19 vaccination and SARS-CoV-2 infection were ever published. The conclusions refute several claims previously made by public health agencies and professional associations. These were the lies spewed and proven wrong. Number one, SARS-CoV-2 and Omicron infections have caused more cases of myocarditis than the COVID-19 mRNA immunizations. False. Two, mRNA vaccine-induced myocarditis is typically mild, transient, and rare with no long-term effects. False. Three, the risk-benefit calculus favors continued use of these products despite evidence of more iatrogenic cases. False. Conclusion. We address each of these misconceptions by applying a combination of epidemiological, clinical, and immunological perspectives. We urge governments to remove the COVID-19 mRNA products from the market due to the well-documented risk of myocardial damage, a risk strongest for men under the age of 40 years old. Well, here's the other thing. Again, we tell you do your own research, but we have it up here on our screen from their ResePro journals. It's the International Journal of Cardiovascular Research and Innovation that this paper was published on. Go check it out, read the entire thing, and decide for yourselves what this all means. And I will tell you, I found, in my research, Richard, sometimes you find some things that really nail it on the head. So we have this image here, this meme that says, it was supposed to be a battle against the pandemic to protect the people. It became a battle against the people to protect the pandemic. Just 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Let's never forget, because history has a way of repeating itself, as we know from World War II and the Nazis and what happened with the Jews and the whole Nuremberg Code. And it was only 80 years later, people forgot. We can never forget, and that should be our number one mission.
I mean, people were threatened with the loss of their job, right? In the Army, you could be kicked out of the Army, I believe with a dishonorable discharge from the Army. I mean the healthcare industry, we praise the healthcare workers because they were fighting the COVID, the virus. And then all of a sudden, those who didn't want to take the vaccine, they were dangerous, disobedient workers who should be fired. I mean,
we were the hamsters, on the turning wheel,
right,
to see how much we could get pushed.
Right.
And if you don't see this as a control event
Right.
of how much they could get away with, well, I have a piece of garbage to sell you for
Right.
diamonds or whatever,
Right.
because you're just not getting it, and it's all coming out.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that we don't love our family members or our friends, our neighbors who took the vaccine. We want to help you. We don't
Right.
want to see you die. We don't want to see you in pain. But at the same time, there has to be accountability and there has to be justice coming for this never to happen again. And the reality is that we can never forget the people, the elder people who were in the homes, who couldn't see their families, who died alone,
Right.
who died on a ventilator, possibly thinking I'm dying, I'm being killed, but I can't move my body. I mean, I have nightmares about that because I do know people in New York, 5 people who died on a ventilator. And I think about it because how could you not?
Right.
You're alone. And everybody's been in a hospital, right?
Right.
Whether it's for yourself or someone else.
Right.
And you've always had your family be there to advocate for you. Oh, did they take their medication? Oh, how are their side effects right now after the surgery? How are they recovering? These are normal things to ask.
Right. Right.
But you're alone, and worse, you signed your life away to be put in a coma
Right.
and trust an institution
Yeah.
with a new practice of a ventilator and have no voice. That there has to be justice for that.
And then there were treatments which were effective in the early stages of the COVID infection, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, other zinc. There were treatments that were effective in the early stages, which were not given out because they were banned.
Richard,
Right.
I think you have something very interesting
Okay,
to
all
share
right.
with
This
us.
is a very sensitive topic. Someone probably needs to make a new dating app that deals with this issue. But it looks like sex between vaccinated and unvaccinated people has certain risks that we need to. I'm glad I'm no longer in the dating market.
Me too.
Okay, but I mean, this is a serious issue.
So can you imagine now, you say to someone, because I remember years ago I had
Right.
friends
Right.
who were very concerned about certain diseases.
Right.
So when they would get into a relationship, it was kind of common, I
Right,
think,
right.
to say, can I see your medical papers that you have no
Herpes.
Yeah, I mean,
Right,
there's nothing
right.
wrong with that. Listen, I love you enough.
Right.
I want to be with you. I'll give you mine, you give me yours, and let's see if we can make this thing work.
Yeah.
Right? Okay,
Right.
there's nothing wrong with
Right,
that.
right.
Well, this brings this whole to another level, Richard.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to take a look?
Yeah, let's take a look at this doctor talking about the danger of an unvaccinated person having sex with someone who is COVID vaxxed.
32 years old and unvaxxed, and he'd got a vaxxed girlfriend. And after he had intimacy with her, he got chest pains and mental fog and a very sore throat and terrible fatigue. And he contacted me because he realized that he'd never had any of this before, and it was directly after being exposed physically, body fluids, whatever, to this vaxxed lady. And this is vaccine shedding. So obviously, those people that got vaxxed now have these genes in their body to keep making spike proteins. And some people are very, very tough and don't seem to notice it until they sometimes just unexpectedly stop breathing. But there's some people who are really sensitive to it. And this guy obviously was. That he was exposed to spike proteins from this girl. He wasn't making the spike proteins, he just got some into his system. and it made him really sick. So I gave him some advice. I said, okay, well, the best things we know for getting rid of those spike proteins are nattokinase, made from fermented soya beans, breaks up those spikes, brilliant natural remedy from Japan. Bromelain, which comes from the stem of a pineapple, breaks up those spike proteins. Curcumin, which is also a brilliant natural anti-inflammatory that is a proven benefit in counteracting the inflammation caused by those spike proteins. And ivermectin, which literally binds those spike proteins and stops them causing the clots. And so I told him to use those 4 things. And so initially he couldn't get the ivermectin because they're still trying to stop people from getting it. But he had the other 3. And so he took the other 3 for a week. And he said there wasn't a big change until he got the ivermectin. And then literally once he took the ivermectin, he said he felt 100% back to normal. So the fact that they have done so much to block people from getting ivermectin speaks volumes.
Okay, there's a few issues here. This may affect dating behavior, obviously, if people become aware of this. I mean, the other, we were talking about the ivermectin as something that, I mean, it's interesting. They've been using ivermectin for decades. It was approved by the World Health Organization as one of the wonder drugs in medical history, and all of a sudden it's a dangerous drug that we should not allow people to have access to.
Well, there's a whole lot of things here that are involved, folks, and where to begin, but I will tell you this much. Ivermectin is also one of the drugs that is recommended if you have children who are autistic. Because what causes neurological damage from vaccine injury is the inflammation that's caused to the neurosystem, to the brain. Ivermectin really helps with that. But again, the longer you've had it, the slower the process is to detox. The quicker the quicker it is to kind of resolve that. So that's good to know. Again, this goes back to our original question about, is everything that we're being told a lie? And obviously, there is no reason to get rid of ivermectin from this country, from having access to it, if there is no harm in it and there's no side effects. So we do currently here in Pennsylvania have a bill that is sponsored by Senator Mastriano to bring back and allow the sale of ivermectin here. There are states across the United States that are doing this right now because, unfortunately, they recognize that they have to have a bill to have something come back, which makes no sense to me at all, because you as a user should have the right to make that decision, you consent to making that decision once you've done your research. The other thing is shedding. Shedding is something that I've been studying for many, many years. Anybody who's been dealing with vaccine injuries understands what shedding is. So I'll give you an example, okay? Let's say you decide to stop vaccinating your kids because you've seen a side effect and your gut instinct tells you something is not right. And you decide that I'm not gonna do this anymore. Well, now you put in, depending on what state you're in, hopefully you're not one of those 4 states, but you put in a religious exemption, now you're not bothered, and you'll see how things go with your child. Well, your child goes to class, especially when they're young. I always knew when kids were getting vaccinated. Do you know why? Sometimes I'd see it on my child's skin.
Really?
It's called shedding for a reason, and it's exactly what it means. So I would know if a child just got an MMR vaccine because I'd see these little red spots on the skin of the hand or that was exposed because kids play with each other. And I would be like, okay, I think somebody got vaccinated in the class.
Right.
But what's even worse is, and try to figure this out, when you file for a religious or a philosophical exemption, one of the things you have to sign off on is if there's an epidemic, your child can't go to school. Cannot go because they're, contagious.
If they're not vaccinated.
If they're not vaccinated. But here's the thing.
Right.
The kids are all shedding.
Right.
Your kid has a strong immune system.
Right.
Your kid's last man standing, but the first one to ask to go home.
Right.
What is wrong with that?
Right. Exactly.
Because they want to control the situation, and they don't want you recognizing that the problem is not the healthy kids, that the real problem is
Right.
what they're not telling us.
Right. And the denial of natural immunity. Right.
Yeah, well, I'm glad, Richard, that you shared that, because Dr. Charles Hoff is, again, a famous doctor who's done the research on this. Everyone that we're sharing here, they're not fly-by-nights, they're not whack jobs, they're not quacks.
Right.
They're esteemed in their professions. So here's some good news, okay? We kind of heard that from Dr. Hoff about the 4 ingredients that you can take to help you detox from the mRNA spikes. Okay.
Right.
Well, we go a little further.
Spike protein.
The
proteins.
spike proteins, that's
Right,
right. Not the spiked hair. I'm not getting rid of that.
Okay.
Did you take the COVID-19 vaccine, at home, okay, for our followers? We're not judging. We understand,
Right.
okay? But there are ways to detox from the mRNA. And we have Dr. Peter McCullough, who we featured before and are following him.
Right.
He has published a paper telling us exactly how to do it, and it's all over-the-counter remedies. Let's take a look.
The biggest response is, oh my God, I took the vaccine. I took the shot. What do I do to protect myself from the aftermath? And you just gave a program that you're suggesting to people. Can you say it again, please?
Yeah, we have a major paper that's been accepted now for publication. Will come out. Base spike detox means it's a base of therapy. You can add other things to it, but we think it's necessary in everybody. We need 2 ways to degrade the spike protein, get it out of the body. First is nattokinase, Nattokinase, 2,000 units twice a day. The second is bromelain, 500 milligrams once a day. They both degrade the spike protein different ways. They accelerate the clearance of it together. And the last is something to reduce inflammation and spike protein damage. That is curcumin, either in the nano or liposomal form is fine. Curcumin, 500 milligrams twice a day. All of these are available over the counter. They are readily available. And I can tell you, people ought to get going on this, because these syndromes, as we're finding out, are bad. Look at these cardiac arrests, major blood clots, people going down. It's because the spike protein is not being cleared out of the body. People can take control of their own bodies and get after this.
So these are the exact ingredients
Right.
that we just heard of,
Right.
minus the ivermectin.
Right. Yeah.
And I would suggest, being someone that takes ivermectin 1 month out of the year to keep my immune system strong, I would suggest, now you have 2 doctors who have said the same thing.
Right.
Maybe look into it. Maybe add the ivermectin if you could get your hands on it. What do you think, Richard?
I mean, obviously it's encouraging that there are some solutions to people who are concerned about the damage that these injections have done to their body. So it's wonderful. I mean, obviously people should look. I hear reports basically every other day about people in the prime of their lives who their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, and who are dying, or you have musicians who are canceling their concerts. I mean, there's millions of dollars involved in these concerts that they're doing, and it must be quite serious for them to cancel. I mean, all kinds of all kinds of different professions, and you wonder why.
There was a whole documentary done,
Right.
Pretty much at the start of COVID, and the mandated vaccines suddenly dead. And there were athletes, soccer players, all kinds of athletes
Right.
that just on the field, all of a sudden they would just keel over and they were dead.
Right.
And a lot has to do with the blood pressure,
Right.
because you're in the heat of the moment, you're running,
Right.
everything is super hyper in your
Right.
body, and the blood flow is immense.
Right.
when you're running across a field trying to
Right,
kick a
right.
ball or stop something
Right.
or stop someone, and then they would just keel over from a heart attack because it is these spike proteins
Well, okay,
and the
okay,
clots.
we don't know. What I would like to see is a study of heart attacks among people in their 20s and 30s, basically, and teens, and compare it before the COVID vaccine and see if there was an increase from the point when starting from the vaccine.
Bobby, I hope you got that. Okay, we need you working on that too. Add that to your to-do list for sure. And here's the other thing. Who'd have thunk
Right.
that it would be our coroners who would be getting to the bottom of this? Because once the COVID vaccine started, I'm not talking about COVID-19, I'm talking about the COVID vaccines, the people who did die, and you're talking about a small percentage
Right.
that would actually adhere
Right.
to having an autopsy. Most families don't do autopsies, right? But what they all said internationally, countries to countries, was that they could not pull out the fluids from the body, which is the blood flow.
Right, right.
And instead it looked like squid-like substances because the blood was coagulating into like clots. They had never seen anything like that before. That all has to be studied. It's out, but they refuse to study it.
Right, yeah. Look, I mean, I have written about some of these topics, and there are studies. If you go to brownstoneinstitute.org, there are studies about the death rates in New Zealand and Australia leading up to COVID and through COVID. And then also, once they started vaccinating people, you can see the death rates. There are a lot of studies that deal with this topic, and I mean, I do discuss this in the Genesis 128 book, but just go to brownstoneinstitute.org and you'll see a lot of studies about this topic. We already have studies which show an uptick in death rates in New Zealand and Australia, and there may be other studies as well.
Well, here's what it comes down
Right.
to. We know here in the United States there were certain democratic states that mandated
Right.
you couldn't work
Right.
unless you were vaccinated, New York being one of them.
Right.
Well, the one thing about New Zealand and Australia was that 100% of those countries, they were mandated for vaccine. How do I know this? Well, we have friends who live there, great patriots. They probably never meet in my entire life, but we were all questioning on social media what is going on. Medical people in Australia who were completely shut down, who had their licenses taken away because they dared to stand up. This doesn't make sense. Why are we mandating this? Boom, you're taken down, you're put in jail. So I'm not surprised
Right.
that we're seeing reports coming out of those areas because you had massive amounts of people take the vaccine. Whereas in other countries, maybe it was 50-50.
But you know, the sad thing is that 75 to 80% of the population agreed with the lockdowns and the censoring of people who are questioning because of fear propaganda. And we have to understand we have a great susceptibility to fear propaganda. And they use that to control people's thinking.
Well, you know, it's very interesting you say that. Here's a very light example of that.
Yeah.
This is why I hated going to New York, because everybody was masked up, even though the
Right.
signs came out and said it doesn't do anything. It's
Right.
like throwing, kicking sand through a gated fence that's hollow. It just goes through,
You
right?
even see people riding their bike out in the fresh air with their mask on. I've even seen pictures of people swimming with their mask on while they're swimming in the swimming pool.
Or you had people like Biden and his wife and Harris and her husband
Right.
kissing with masks on. I mean, really? Is this what you do? I'm just really curious. Is anybody buying that? You know, oh, you could sleep together, but put that mask
Oh, that's right.
on the mouth.
Okay.
Or maybe it
I
was a
think
sign to stop
the
talking.
director of public health in New York State went to a sex party with 100 other people having open sex, but telling the rest of us, no, you can't have a dinner with 5 or 10 people coming to your house.
You know, Dr. Richard Panzer, sometimes you really do shock me, and you are just a plethora of all kinds of knowledge. But so I'm walking through Home Depot, and, you know, after the first week, no masks, okay? And once in a while, even here in Pennsylvania, you'd get somebody, you know, a Karen. No offense, Karen. One of our people who work here, or media, her name is Karen. Not you, Karen, okay? The other Karens. And I would get somebody who would say, oh, mask up.
Right, exactly.
And, you know, I'm not going to sit here arguing with a stranger. It's not my nature. You should believe what you want to believe, but let me believe what I want to believe too. Right? And so my response would always be, thank you, you too. And the expression of like, what, am I missing something? And then I'd walk away.
Right.
So I'd leave them in shock, because that usually would shut people down, because they're wondering what just happened, and then just quickly go away. So this was my human experimental way of handling it with being non-confrontational. That never works. People believe what they want to believe. But what it all came down to was replacing faith with fear.
Right.
And for those who really understood that life was so precious, and it came to a point where you had real science already coming out, and saying that, well, children not going to school, well, how does that better their lives? You know, you got to be locked up and alone and isolated. Well, how does that help anybody? I can't see my dying, you know, mother because they won't let me. You know, I've known people who said, I had to take the shot. I said, but you're not for the shot. How did you have to take the shot? You're retired. Well, you know, my elderly mother said that I can't see her unless I took the shot and could prove it. And I'm like, how the heck does that happen? The manipulation was to sky high, but we're here to tell you folks, we're mostly over it. We're still recovering, but we cannot forget, and we need the signs to be out there for this to never be attempted again. But now it goes even worse, Richard, because President Trump, during his first presidency, 45, was really attacked for everything, but has been proven right with everything.
He did try to shut this narrative down, but he was not able to, unfortunately. It's interesting to me.
He never forced mandates. What he was told was that you're going to have to close the country.
Right.
And he, as a leader and a businessman, never wanted this country closed.
Right.
So that's why he was very open. If this is what's going to get you to still go to work and pay your bills, do it. Here's
hydroxychloroquine.
Thank you. I can never say that word to this day. Or take your ivermectin or whatever it is, but still keep living. Obviously, the people that were surrounding him were satanic, and these are your scientists who are advising you.
He did bring in Dr. Scott Atlas as a white from Stanford University. And Scott Atlas would go to meetings with Fauci and Deborah Birx, and he would bring studies about these issues, about the vaccine and the effectiveness, and he noticed, and about masking, and he actually had research, and no response to the studies that he shared. Fauci and Birx brought no studies whatsoever, showed no interest in hearing the scientific information that he was bringing, and he realized they were not really in charge, actually. If you look into this,
there were puppets.
The Department of Defense invested in bioterrorism. That we're funding the Wuhan lab in China. There's a bigger agenda which the American people need to understand.
Well, the thing that you just hit upon, which was Trump said, this is the China virus because it came from Wuhan. And they're like, oh, you're so racist,
Right.
you know, and lo and behold, yeah, it came from Wuhan. So we
And
kind
we
of...
we funded that. We funded that lab. Anthony Fauci lied about this. And our own government has been funding this, and we need to look into this.
But one of the things with the Wuhan and having this relationship, because we hear a lot of things about the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party,
Right.
and we hear sometimes that certain politicians are in bed, wink wink, honeypot, or lobbyists that are influenced by the CCP, or even politicians who are in certain positions, like Phyllis Wong, who was the head inspector of the USAID and was killing all our chickens.
Right.
So it seems, if you look at the
Meaning
research,
with the flu,
yeah, with the PCR test. So they would take this high number of PCR tests, do one chicken, and the farm that had 1 million chickens now had to kill all their chickens. They call it culling,
Right.
but it's a horrific, and we covered that as well. So you have to ask yourself, how embedded is the CCP in the United States? And boy, Richard, this goes very deep, because this does affect our health, especially if they're trying to take away our food sources, especially if they're trying to create viruses that we have never seen before as part of their depopulation studies. So let's take a look at this, because it looks like they got their own bioterrorist lab in California.
To China, check out this warehouse. It's in Reedley, California. It's no ordinary warehouse. It's illegal. It is an illegal Chinese-run virus laboratory. Local and federal officials raided the facility. They discovered that it stored at least 20 infectious agents, including coronavirus, HIV, herpes, and malaria. But it was also genetically engineering mice. The lab was run under a company called Prestige Biotech. It was unlicensed for business in California. And get this, if it were not for a garden hose sticking out of the building, the warehouse might not have been discovered. And now Chairman of the House Select Committee on China, Congressman Mike Gallagher, is calling the discovery of the lab troubling. Wisconsin Republican and Chairman of the House Select Committee on China, Congressman Mike Gallagher, joins me. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good to be with you.
What was this lab for, and why did the Chinese own a lab in California?
Well, the reality is we don't know the full extent of the purpose or whether there are additional facilities like this in the United States. What we are seeing across the board, though, from the Chinese Communist Party is an all-out assault on American sovereignty. And it's not just the discovery of this lab. Obviously, we've seen the establishment of illegal police stations in the heart of Manhattan. We've seen troubling land purchases on behalf of Chinese entities near American military bases. We've seen continued cyber warfare against our infrastructure domestically. So across the board, the CCP is testing us. They're exploiting the loopholes in our system, and we're not doing enough to defend ourselves right now. We need to take steps to prevent this from happening. It's across the board, and the extent of Chinese spying and so-called United Front work is still poorly understood. This should teach us one thing above all else, that the China threat is not just a distant over there threat, it's a right here at home threat.
There's another aspect to this report that I want to mention. My understanding is that the Communist Chinese government has been working on designing viruses that attack non-Asians. All right, and we have, you know, about the 23andMe, you know, all of, like, you have millions of people getting these tests, right? That's a lot of valuable information that the Chinese government has access to. And with the CRISPR technology, they can design specific, attack certain genes that are according to race. Actually, it's something we should actually look into in the future.
You know, I've heard about this, Richard,
Yeah.
and you bring it up, and it's like, wow, here's another way to get rid of, or to depopulate.
Right.
And I can't help thinking, as you're stating these facts, that the white man or the white race has been under attack, and you have, as you state in your book,
Right.
the three satanic kind of antichrist, as you say.
Right.
One of them being communism, which is really right now rampant, obviously, and has been through China and Russia. And then you also have radical Islam, which we talked about in the last show, which was absolutely incredible. If you missed it, folks, you need to catch it. But one of the things that I think people assume is that the number of white people who are Christians,
Right.
and most of them did come out of Europe, or whether it be Eastern or Western, and it all comes back to me, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, prove me wrong, let's have this discussion. The attack on Christianity, and it happens to be related to white people.
Okay, look, if you want to, actually, the third Antichrist that I write about is, I call it woke fascism. Okay, so let's imagine that you think that these constitutional protections for freedom of speech, freedom of religion are outdated, and it's not efficient, and you want to have a strong, powerful government able to make quick decisions, and having it go through 2 houses of Congress and having the president sign, it's just too slow. And we have a technocracy that think they're smarter than everybody else, and they want to be able to implement policies like this. Then they have to override or get rid of these constitutional protections. The way they did that on the COVID lockdowns is through fear propaganda, and you had health agencies lying to the American people in order to impose lockdown, the removal of our constitutional freedoms to run a business, to speak freely, to engage in life. And it's interesting, the group that was most unlikely to cooperate with the vaccine mandates were evangelical Christians. Think about that for a second. The evangelical Christians said, there's something, I'm not sure exactly what's wrong with this, but God tells me my first allegiance is not to government, my first allegiance is to God.
Well, also the fact that if you read in Revelations, for those who follow, it was almost like a mapping of what was going on. And I think, God clearly created this miracle of life, and how our bodies, we still don't know 100% how they work. We may never know exactly how they work. But, when you say the body is the temple.
Right, exactly.
You have to question what you put in it.
Right.
And if, food is one thing. You may say, oh, I'm going to have this piece of cheesecake. Oh, it's the best. It's 1,000,000 calories, but I'm going to have it because it's my birthday.
Right.
It goes in, it goes out.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Not this.
Right, exactly.
So, good point. And folks, if you haven't read it, we're going to have a slide at the end of the show for Richard Panzer's Genesis 1:28 book. Please get it. It's something, I promise you won't regret it. It's filled with a whole lot of information, education that people need to know on today. Which brings us to, because, we talk about life and we talk about the attack on our children, which brings us to this week's Scripture of the Week.
Okay, the Scripture of the Week is Luke 18:16. But Jesus called the children to him and said, let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for the kingdom of God belongs to such as these.
Amen.
And our main responsibility is to protect them.
Absolutely, and they know that. If they get our kids,
Right.
well, there's no future. Well, in celebration of protecting the greatest gift of God, our children, we have our video music clip of the week, Hand to Hold by J.J. Heller. Enjoy. Please comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts on our topics today, and tell us where you're from, and tell us what you'd like to see. So we'll see you next week.
Yes.